right, hello everyone. Hello and welcome to another episode of BIM After Dark Live. My name is Jeff, also known as the Revit Kid. This is episode 87 of the show, believe it or not. For those of you that are new here, this is a weekly live stream, typically on Thursday nights, where we talk about Revit, BIM, and basically anything sort of tangent or adjacent to that topic. And so I want to thank you guys for joining me here. We've got some new and returning visitors live. If you are here live, don't forget to chat, ask questions along the way, and hang out. You have a benefit of chatting with us live and asking questions, so make sure you take advantage of that as well. Before we jump in, we are going to talk about groups, which is awesome. I know a lot of you guys are here to talk about that. I've got a returning guest that you guys are probably all familiar with, and I'll introduce him soon. Before I do introduce him, I did want to also mention that this episode of BIM After Dark Live is supported by the BIM After Dark community. For those of you not familiar with the BIM After Dark community, it is a private community run by yours truly. And what we do in this community here is we not only have full-length courses, like you see here if I jump over to courses. We have 4 courses, one that has to do with presentation techniques, the other one has to do with documentation, like construction documents, making families, and of course DIY Dynamo, my flagship course on Introduction to Dynamo. Within each course, you also have the ability to not only download sample files, but also have a comments area and a chat area, so you can ask questions along the way to myself or other people taking the course with you, which is awesome. But we also have a public feed, and so we have a feed here where you can actually ask questions related or not related to any of the content within the courses. You can see here's a question from Carlos, who is doing a multi-family residential setup where he's talking about links versus groups and benefits and pros and cons of each, which is perfectly on topic for what we're talking about today. And we also have office hours. So if I head on over to office hours here, every other week I hold a live Zoom call with myself and whoever else joins from the community. You could see this week, actually yesterday, we had a Zoom call here, and we had a good attendance. We had about 9 people from the community on, and we talked about interior design models, Dynamo, D-Roots Paramanager, and some template stuff. So that's actually 55, believe it or not, 55 office hours we've had so far. So if you're interested in that and joining the community, then head on over to community.bimafterdark.com. I'm holding a 30% off sale from now until the end of this season of BIM After Dark Live, which is basically Christmas time. So keep an eye on that, but definitely head on over to community.bimafterdark.com and see if you want to come hang out with us in the community and myself and learn some new stuff. So with all that being said, I see we've got Shamila's here. Hey Shamila, what's up? And Junior's here as usual from Jamaica. What's up, Junior? As I bring in Nick to the show from Pure Revit, we were laughing beforehand because it's fun to see all the overlap between some of the audiences that hang out with us live here on our shows. So Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Those of you that don't know Nick or Nicholas from Pure Revit, he also has a live show at Revit Pure Live at his YouTube channel, and also revitpure.com. And how many episodes are you on? You're probably in 40 or 50, right?
I've just done 45.
Nice. Congrats on another season, right? I think you have one more episode left in this season as well for yourself.
The season officially ended yesterday.
Okay.
It was a special season all about families.
Mm-hmm.
It's been exploring families, but there's a special bonus episode at the end of the year, on the December 21st.
Got it.
With the guests yet to be revealed. Actually, maybe I did create the event on YouTube, but not yet announced. But
so if someone's sneaky enough, they can poke around your YouTube channel and maybe find out.
Probably so. But it's kind of happy hour, just chatting and having fun. And
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Nick has definitely been on the show before. He's a friend of the show, and I guess for those of you who don't know who Nick is, maybe give yourself a little 30-second bio, if you don't mind, Nicholas.
Sure, I am an architect and a BIM specialist. I've been working 10 years at a firm here in Quebec City, where I was charged to help transition the firm from AutoCAD to Revit. And then on the side, I've started creating a learning website called Revit Pure, where the idea was to take complex Revit ideas and try to explain them as simply as I could. And it has grown over the years. And since last year in March, I went fully into my own as a consultant. My consulting company is BIMPure, and actually my plan for next year is to convert everything Revit Pure into BIMPure as well. It's a long process though, so we'll see about that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of notification to folks that want to continue on following you. So, Junior asked, when does your show come on live? It was typically Wednesdays, I believe, is when you were doing it, but right?
Yeah. Wednesday. My shows are Wednesdays afternoon or evening, and actually yesterday it was Wednesday morning. It was my first morning show, and it was pretty fun. It was a coffee show, different from evening vibe.
Yeah. It depends on time. It makes sense sometimes depending on the guests and where they're from too. You may have to make it a morning show sometimes as well. But
yeah, it was a European guest. So
got it. There you go. Well, we're gonna talk about groups today. When Nick and I were trying to figure out sort of what topic we wanted to dive into, he spent a lot of time focusing on a couple things especially for sessions for conferences, and one of the ones was groups. And I know that it's always a hot topic, and as you saw from my little snip of the community there, there's quite a bit of multifamily residential stuff going on, and apartment buildings, and even some hotels that I've noticed quite a bit of the members within the private community, but also outside on Twitter and so on and so forth. That I think the conversation is going to be valuable to some folks, and I know you've got some cool things to show, so I'm pretty excited to jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the reason I wanted to talk about groups, or I did explore that topic, is I was working on a modular project, and there was this big debate: do we use groups or links for the modular buildings? Mm-hmm. And so at first, I think it's probably groups, but I wasn't sure. But the firm started with links, mm-hmm. and I did this whole investigation. So what is best? And one of the videos with a great resource with you and Aaron Maller, I think it was last year or something like that,
yep.
And groups versus links. Mm-hmm. I've watched it a few times, I got to say, this live episode. I took lots of notes and other good resources as well. A couple of quick shout outs to 8020 BIM, another YouTube channel, has great videos about groups as well.
Awesome.
Pretty well researched.
Cool. And we'll put links to those in the description too after the show for sure.
Okay, and there's another one by Naveen Nabil, who's now working at ID8. And she did a whole exploration of groups versus links specifically for modular construction. So that was a pretty good resource. I just wanted to give shout outs.
Awesome.
It was helpful during my research. And yeah, since we already did group versus links, I would say the solution I mostly came by was groups are usually better. There can be exceptions. And if you have a good workflow using links, it's okay as well, as long as you're aware of the limitations.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm going to focus on the groups and talk about some of the challenges first and things you should be careful if you're using groups. Mm-hmm. And then we can talk about some of the automation stuff.
Yeah.
Two automation stuff. One is automating the schedules, like to schedule everything inside of a group. And the second one, to create views for each group. Assuming that you're using group for apartments, for example, and you want to create a view of each apartment.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, the today definitely, I don't think we want to rehash the groups versus links, and I will post all that down there, and they both have pros and cons. If you watch the video with Aaron, which I think is episode 50 something, I will put the link below from last year. He has some great ways of comparing. I mean, awesome video on how. So what we're going to do today is we're going to pretend that you've gone through all of that and you've decided that groups are your choice for this particular project, and then Nick is going to give us some awesome tips and tricks on when you decide that, how to utilize groups and take advantage of them. I think that's a good approach here, and I will keep an eye on the chat as we go through this. So feel free to ask questions, and I will try to slide them in as they make sense based on the content. So with that, man, I'll let you take it away.
Sure. So. Can you see my screen?
Yep, they see it.
Okay, well, first, you can download all the content. This is from the Build conference, so I didn't recreate the PowerPoint because I'm lazy. But you can download the entire.
Although I hope I don't get in trouble for that. So anyone at Built, if we have the logo there and you don't want it, let me know. I'll cut it out afterwards. I don't think it'll be a problem.
I think it's good publicity for them.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you go to revitpure.com/build 2022, let's click it and see. Yeah, so you can see the URL. So you can download the handout PDF, the presentation PowerPoint, and the 2 Dynamo scripts I mentioned during the presentation.
Awesome.
And the 2 most recent pamphlets that you can also download at revitpure.com/pamphlets. give myself a quick shout out. They're not there in the list, but you will get them. Both of them are about groups as well. The first one is about groups, generally speaking, and the second volume is about automating groups using Dynamo. Awesome. All right, so let's get started. Let me skip all this detailed slides. So yeah, my research, my conclusion was groups are the best when you're doing multi-family housing. They're pretty good when you're doing modular projects as well. That was my general conclusion. So we're going to skip the part why. However, groups have a weird reputation, and deservedly so. I think the tool is a bit weird, a bit buggy. And so what do you hear all the time? Groups are buggy, they crash, they're unreliable. And you also hear don't group, mirror, nest, or attach detail group, and so on. So we're going to explore what of this is true and what things are not so true. So yeah, that was the overall presentation, but we're going to skip some of the parts. I'm going to skip the parts about just creating a group. And we'll skip right away to 19 tips to avoid issues with groups. So there's a lot of tips, right?
Yeah.
The first one is never use datum elements inside groups. I think for most users that would be pretty obvious. But when I talk about datum elements, that can include the grids, levels, reference planes, and scope boxes. I would say the biggest one to really be careful is levels. Reference planes in some case, maybe it's not, it can be okay. But levels, you will create chaos in your model if you include a level. I'm
surprised you can even do that. I've never even tried. You can actually add them into groups, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And I saw a project was, what's going on? Like, why are so many levels copied around? So, and it was included in groups. So
I guess actually when you bind a link, a lot of times it'll bring the levels with it too. So I've seen them in there, but I've never actually, I didn't realize you can physically select. Huh. Good to know. Yeah. Don't do that.
Avoid in place families. So in place families, like it's funny, we're talking about it before the show started. Like in some exceptional case, some people say never use them again ever. If it's really a one-off, like for one specific part, okay. They just mostly. I think the issue is most people use model in place for the wrong purpose. But in theory, the model in place, you're not supposed to copy and paste them around. If that's the case, you should create loadable families instead. So they don't have their place into groups, and they will cause all sorts of weird issues. So that's it. So nested group. I'm not saying don't nest group. I think nesting group can be great. But what I saw, I was working with a firm of architects, and they were doing multifamily. They were using groups, but I spotted a few issues that would improve their groups. So it's okay to nest groups, but don't do it for reasons like that. For example, if you have a table and multiple chairs, and don't create a group out of the table and the chairs and then nest it into another group, because this is a useless group. You could use, but just leave them separated, or you could create shared families instead, nested shared families. So that's bad. So what is good? Nested families instead. So maybe if we have enough time, we'll see a couple of examples what I mean by nested shared families.
Perfect.
But anyway, like especially for furniture like that, it's just going to make your model heavier and cause all sorts of problems. Let's talk about groupception. The problem is that you get stuck in permission, right? When you start modifying a group and somebody else wants to modify it as well, they ask permission, so you got to give them permission. So when you start adding multiple groups, and maybe part of a group is part of multiple groups at once, you can cause a lot of problem with permissions. And then when you go deeper than 2 levels, things can get weird. So I would say by good practice, generally speaking, don't go no more than 2 level deeps. I think 2 level deeps is the maximum I would recommend. In theory, it can be done, but it's pretty hard to manage, in my opinion. And I would say consider nesting the groups as the project progress. So maybe at first, nested groups are okay, but maybe later on, when you are in a more advanced stage, you can get rid of some of these nested groups. Be careful when mirroring. I don't know what's up with this image. I just think I googled weird mirror or something like that. Yeah. So again, I'm not saying never mirror groups. I'm saying be careful when mirroring groups, different things. So first, let's bust a myth. Like mirroring the group will not corrupt the group. It will not break the group necessarily. However, some elements can be reversed, right? So let's give you an example. Let's say you have some plumbing and you have hot and cold water. If you reverse the group, well, maybe they're not in the right spot anymore. Or if in some families, it doesn't make sense to mirror them. So you got to be careful with that. And maybe it's just under the hood. Maybe it's a nice person that is being mirrored, but if you look under, it's a monster. So in some cases, it might make sense to create a left and right variant. I would probably recommend just try to mirror the group and see if everything works right. Ceilings can be problematic as well. I've heard about it. So if you have suspended ceilings and lighting families, they can get weird. So verify them if you're using mirrors. And I added a link over there. It's an article by Tim Waldock, aka the Revit Cat, that says a mirror is anti-BIM. Let me just briefly show it. So this is from our friend in Australia, Tim Waldock. Revit mirror command is so not BIM. So it just says all the weird things that happen when you mirror something. First, like the element unique ID changes.
Yep.
And like Tim talks about lots of weird behavior that happen when you mirror elements. However, it's funny, when I said that, Tim sent me an email saying, I'm not saying never mirror things. I'm just saying be careful with some of the weird things. Be careful when
you do. Yes. Yeah. No, I'll post a link to that. Tim's awesome. And that I remember seeing that blog post from, I think it was last year, maybe. I don't remember.
2021.
Yeah. So I'll post a link to that as well. Tim was actually on the show too.
Oh, really?
I don't know, in like the episode 30s or something like that, and he came on to talk about NURBS modeling in Revit. It was pretty cool. So
cool.
I'll put a link to that too. Why
not? Okay, so shout out.
But definitely, yeah, that was a great article, and yeah, it's a great article to understand how certain elements react to mirroring, not just groups or within groups. It was just general, like when you mirror shit, this is what happens. So it's really really good read for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I give another example. I have a 3D text and on this stable family that is embedded. If I mirror it, you can see that it gets weird. And so again, not saying never mirror. It can be good, especially early on in the project. You want to save time. If you try to mirror and if you see that nothing seems to break, it might be okay. And maybe later on, you can start to create a left and right variant. So just giving you what you need to consider. Right. Okay, let's talk about fixed groups. So meme credit to Naveen for this one. So fixed groups, as most of you may know about this, but it doesn't actually fix the groups. It gives you two options when you get this warning. And it says, how do you want to fix the inconsistent groups? The first option is ungrouped inconsistent groups. So you lose the group and the elements will never be grouped again. So not good. And create new group type, basically creating a different group. And I've worked in project back in the days, the first big projects were using groups that people got this warning and were not very careful and just hit whatever option. The first one, who cares? Let's hit this button and see what it does. Oh, okay, apparently the group has been fixed. But why haven't changed this unit A and it's changed here but not over there? I don't get it.
And there's 57 types of unit A all of a sudden. It's like unit A 57, 56, 55. Yeah, I've seen that. Yep.
So if you get this warning, never click fix group. This is not a real solution. You got to click cancel and try to figure out what happens. So this is super freaking. If you've ever used group, I'm sure you got this warning. And it's mostly with hosting and hosted elements that you'll get this. For example, you have a piece of, let's say, a toilet that is hosted on a wall. The toilet is part of the group, but not the wall. And so if you copy and paste, like the toilet is confused, where's my host? So you'll get this warning. And another one, let me bring in Revit. So I have the most boring possible sample file, but sadly, my projects were all under NDAs for this one. But
so. Simple's better for live demo because then it won't break as easy.
Exactly. So let's create a group with this one. I'll call it app01. Oh shoot. Okay. Let's call it department B. Okay. And let's go into a 3D view. Okay. Let's say this is my group, and now let me paste it and change the level to level 2. So right now it is fine. And let me show you. Okay, so this is good. You can see the base constraints. For example, it's level 2. It goes to level roof. Everything seems fine. But if I change the height of the level, let's say that I push level 2 like this, the groups gets confused. I don't know what to do. Like AML constraints are weird.
Yeah.
You get this warning, blah, blah, blah. And if you don't pay attention, you fix groups. You get the two options. Click one of the two and you break the groups and cause irreversible damage to your model. So don't do it.
Don't do it. or click cancel and fix it. That's it.
Yeah,
and you won't get it again, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Don't look and constrain the group to an outside element. So let's say that you have a group and you constrain a piece of furniture to a window that's outside of it and lock the constraint. If you move the window, if you move the group, Revit will get confused. You might get a warning. I think maybe it will not get the fixed group, but anyways, just not a good idea to do something like that. Okay, so when we're talking about layouts for apartments, don't include exterior walls, corridors, and party walls. So, yeah, so let's say that we do a quick modeling. Okay, let's say that this is my apartment. This is my apartment, right? So this is the corridor, and let's say there's another apartment out there. This is the entrance. So this is apartment A, this is apartment B. So what I would include in the group, I would not include any of the exterior elements, and I would include this, this, and this, and I wouldn't include the entrance door as well because it is hosted in the corridor wall. So that's the only thing I would include inside of the group. So of course, it's a fake apartment. You would usually get more, but I don't include a corridor wall because the corridor might touch with multiple different units. Exterior, I never mix exterior and interior in the same group. Will just cause all sorts of problems. And party wall, let's say that you have a wall separating different units. Well, how do you decide in which group is it going to be? So better leave it out of the group.
And would you not bring in the door either? That's attached. Anything that's hosted to the party wall, you would probably try to keep out of it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it's coming, but like you need to, if you include an element, you need to include the host as well, which means that the main doors that are on the corridor wall, they need to be on their own, so not part of the group. Yeah, I mentioned that the exception to this rule is modular construction. So I've been working in modular, and so the party wall, for example, is doubled wall for each module. So in this case, it makes sense,
right?
Like to include everything. Actually, if you're doing modular, you can include everything that would be in the module itself,
right? Yep.
Right. But if you're doing traditional construction, it's better to think in terms of interior versus exterior, and then even interior, remove party wall, corridor wall, and so on.
Right, that makes sense because you could have a modular unit that has exterior and the party wall potentially, or at least all four walls. I mean, depending on what those walls are. So that makes sense.
Yeah, even the modular construction, like part of the exterior wall is there. Yeah, I just separate the siding, so with the brick or whatever they're going to put on the module. This is done separately. So there are two exterior walls in this case.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, so earlier on, I've shown what happens when you put constraints, and if you have different heights of the levels, you will get the fixed group warnings. So what I recommend is to put unconnected, or you can just put the same level as well. So where do I have a group? Okay, let's say this is this group, and all the walls right now have to go up to level 2. So you could put unconnected and just put this offset value. And actually, someone emailed me saying that instead of unconnected, I should just use level 1 and put the top offset.
Which is, yeah, in theory, it's the same thing, but I can see, depending on the wall makeup, I know that there's some different reactions.
Yeah, I think there was some sort of bug that happens if you use unconnected. I'm not so sure about it, but that's what the person told me. Should have been investigated, but anyway, unconnected worked fine for me. I didn't have any issues, but I would have to look back. But yeah, use unconnected. You will avoid warnings if you use the groups on multiple levels and you have levels of different height.
Somebody in the chat actually has a question I think is pretty good for the example you were just showing, which is would you include ceilings within those apartment groups if there were ceilings in there?
Yeah, I would include the ceilings. Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's coming. Yeah, I can show you where ceilings do I have it. It maybe later, but anyway, I can talk about it right now. Do I have a ceiling plan in there? Ceiling. Let's say it's here. Okay, if I add a ceiling, okay, this is my ceiling. Make sure it is set to level 1 with enough set from level 1 as well.
Hmm.
And don't use level 2 and set a negative value, for example.
Right.
So if you do that, like again, it will get confused when using multiple heights,
Hmm.
right?
Makes sense.
So yeah, but I would include the ceiling. I don't know if the question is referring to some of the bugs that ceilings can have with mirroring and
Maybe it wasn't.
with
He
the odd
wasn't very
behavior.
specific, but he
Okay.
said, "Would you just include them as part of the apartment groups or in their own groups?" And I was based on levels. I'm not really sure.
Okay, having a look
But
myself.
I think that's what I think what you're saying there with
Mhm.
keeping them as part of the group, but making sure that they're hosted to the same level as the group, and same
Mhm.
idea with with the walls, right? And so and maybe what he's referring to is a lot of times, especially in residential, you might have a level for underside of structure or
Mhm.
something, and then tops, depending on, especially in wood construction, a lot of times it's nice to have that bottom of joist or whatever, and so maybe that's what he's
Mhm.
talking about. But as long as you have
Yeah.
it hosted off the same level as the group, then you're safer than, because if you host it off a secondary level, then yeah, you're not gonna do good, like you said, like you showed.
Yeah. Yeah, generally speaking, everything is hosted on one level.
Hmm.
So I've shown the constraints, the bottom of top constraint, everything is level 1,
Hmm.
and to make sure that all the elements are also all on the same level. I don't
Hmm.
want to see any element on the group referring to anything other than level 1 or
Right.
unconnected.
Yep. Good point.
So you will avoid lots of issues. Lots of fixed group things are just constraints that
Yep.
have gone
Yep.
bad.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. Oh, I lost my page. Where am I? Okay, we talked about that. Let's see.
Oh, he just clarified, by the way. It's a good
Okay.
question. It's he was referring to he's referring to the ceilings within the groups, but if one level if the ceiling heights have to change, then remove the ceilings from the group. Yeah, then it's a different group anyways, right? If you have one group
Hmm.
that has an 8 foot ceiling, another group that has a 9 foot ceiling, I would argue that's a different group type, right? In my opinion. I mean, I don't know if I don't know if,
Yeah, probably, unless
right?
there's like different heights on the same apartment, maybe.
Maybe, but those are all offsets from level one, right? I mean, so those would be consistent as far as the
Yeah.
group.
Or
But if you
yeah.
went to another apartment type, let's say there's apartment type A, and then the other one has A, but it's 10 foot ceilings instead of 9, I'd argue that that's a different type. In my right, I think
Yeah,
that's
probably. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, in this case, if you have like really different ceilings, is there a case that
Mm.
maybe ceiling can be included? Maybe.
Hmm. Fair
Maybe,
enough.
sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we talk about that. Okay, so if you don't, people will say, well, if I don't use a constraint to the walls, I do make sure that they go all the way to the slabs. So there's the only possible workaround for this. Let's go back to the 3D view. Let's use this one, and I copy it again. Okay, just having a look at something. Okay, like now they're unconnected, which
Hmm.
is good. Let me create. Do I have a slab on this one? Not really, right? Okay. So I'll go to level 2 and just quickly create some sort of floor. And going back to the 3D view. Okay, let's just pull the height a little bit. And go back there. Okay. I don't need this. So yeah, the problem with this is if you have different heights, different level heights, how do you ensure that the wall will go all the way? to the slab. So there's one thing you can do, one behavior that is specific to a group instance and that will not affect the rest, the other groups, and it is to attach the top and the base. So you can use this tool and attach like this, and you can see that, well, when it will be done. So you can see that this only affects this instance of the group. So we have the same groups, but this one we've attached it, but it doesn't affect this other one. So I know the attached top of the wall can be a controversial tool. Not everybody loves this. It creates constraint, but if you're in case you have different level heights and it bothers you that the walls aren't going all the way to the slab, it is the workaround.
Is that changing if you edit that group and select the wall that you just attached? Is that changing the data for the height? No, it's still saying 2700, right? Because that's the profile of the wall. Got it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it.
It's like if you did profile.
And that's the only when it comes to the attach wall tool. In my opinion, as a downstream user of BIM these days, that can be an issue because what's reporting of the wall height versus what the wall height is can be an issue. But that's that's
yeah, good question. Let's say let's have a look at the area. This one is 16, and this
it might
one...
give you the same areas or separate areas. Right?
No, like it seems to compute the area difference.
Yeah. Right.
And
which is good.
Yeah.
but
the unconnected height is not good. So
right. And so that's again that's it's at least giving the geometrical information for the area, but with having worked with estimators now, like sometimes they don't like looking at the area of the wall because they like to take just the length times the height and ignore the openings for the way they do the test. And so when you do that, that's when you start realizing the height of the wall isn't always the height, which and there's different ways too. Even if you didn't do attach, if you did edit the profile, right, and you just pulled it or made it modify the profile, it doesn't change that height either. And so I've just noticed that. In my I don't think that's maybe the only reason why people don't like attach, but I can tell you it's one of the things that has affected me for sure.
Maybe in this case, if like quantities and the unconnected height is an important value, if you really have different heights, maybe a different group can be used in this case.
Yeah.
Okay. But another problem with groups is that if you have an element, okay, this is pretty clear. If it's better to have elements that are level hosted and not wall hosted or hosted in other elements. So let's see what we have on this one. If I go here, this toilet, is it? Okay, this one is wall hosted, which means that let's say this is my apartment and I place it there and I add it to my group. And then I try to copy and paste this, it's confused about it because it doesn't find the host wall. Yeah, you can see what happens. I only have a wall and a door now because the two toilets are excluded from the group, and I can try to restore all the excluded, but it doesn't really work. So in this case, use level hosted families instead of wall hosted. Do I have one in this project? Let's see. Oh no. Oh, created a steel plate. My mistake. It's crushing. Okay. No thanks. Okay. Components. Oh yeah, maybe this one. Yeah, this is level hosted. I can place it anywhere, which means that if I add this one to a group, and you can see it appears there, no issues at all. So I generally prefer level hosted families when creating groups for multifamily housing. I avoid all sorts of weird issues like that. That would be my advice. Yes, as I mentioned earlier with the ceiling, the same thing. Always use the level, the base level. And don't use a negative offset from the level that is above it. Now let's talk about phase-based. I know you talked about this with Aaron on the last show. Phase-based families, pretty controversial topic as well. They're weird with groups. I would say
so weird with groups. I mean, I can't even tell you the amount of weird crap I've seen with phase-based families and groups.
Really weird behavior. And at first, it might seem okay. And at some point, you're like, what is going on
Hmm.
there? Like just weird heights, offset, fixed groups. And you can see an example here. If I have a phase-based families and I give an offset to the group, like the phase base doesn't move. Uh, and this is for vertical.
Hmm.
If you place a phase base on a vertical phase, that you will get this weird behavior.
Hmm.
If you place it on a horizontal plane, usually it seems to be okay.
Hmm.
But why would you place a phase base on a horizontal plane?
Right.
Good
Right.
question. But it doesn't seem, with the test I made, it doesn't seem to cause issues.
I guess the vertical would be, or the horizontal could be with ceilings. A lot of face-based
Yeah,
families for
yeah,
ceilings, and
that's
that's
true. Yeah,
even that can cause some wonky
yeah,
stuff to
sure.
happen. Yeah.
So yeah, maybe in this case, just avoid them as
Yeah.
much as you can
Agreed.
in groups to avoid problems.
Agreed.
The same for work plane based families as well.
Hmm.
They're pretty similar to face based and seems to have the same kind of issues.
Hmm.
If for those not familiar with for any Revit family, I'm not sure it's the case with yeah, any Revit family, you have a checkbox that says work plane base, and it's caused the family to become very similar to a face based family.
Hmm.
So I would avoid that as well. So and even yeah, wall hosted. So generally speaking, just standard non-hosted families work the best
Hmm.
for that.
Definitely.
Okay. Uh, Use rooms inside groups. So I would say rooms work pretty good in groups, generally speaking. And what happens when you place a room is that the name the room number can be changed, but the room name cannot be changed. So you will have to keep the same name everywhere. If that's a problem for you, well, just don't put the rooms in the groups. But you can change the number, and it's automatically adjusted to the next one
Hmm.
if you copy and paste the group. So I can see the time fly, so we'll surely be going to a bit of Dynamo stuff. But let's finish some of these tips. So all elements inside a group are in the same work set. Yeah, if you're using work set, don't even think about trying to add elements on multiple work sets. It's not good. But basically, even if that wasn't the case, elements inside the groups are assigned to the group work set. So each group has a specific work set to it. And
Hmm.
when you change it, all the elements inside are assigned to this work set. So in theory, this shouldn't be an issue
Hmm.
because the work set of the elements is acquired from the groups.
Right.
But it's something important to be mindful of. Like if you're using work sets in a certain way where you would place them in different work sets,
Right.
although generally I recommend trying to use work sets in a simple manner.
Hmm.
But something to keep in mind that you will lose your work sets and the group has a single work set for all the elements inside of it. But generally speaking, yeah, all group instances. But yeah, all the group instances, if you copy and paste a group, like make sure it's on the same work set. Else it could get weird. And phase setting as well. So the group itself doesn't have phase created and phase demolished.
Right.
You cannot phase a group by itself, but each element inside the group does have the parameter. And the phasing can vary from one group instance to another. So you could add the exact same apartment. One of them is created in phase existing. The other one is created in phase new. But when you create a group, like paste a group instance, it will acquire the current view like it would of any new element.
Hmm.
Maybe I can try that a little bit. So you can see here, uh, okay, whatever. So I'm taking this one and let's paste it into the existing floor plan. So I'm pasting it over here. You can see I have phase filter that makes it gray. And if I go back to this one, it's over here. You can see it's gray. Why? So again, no phase settings for the group itself. If I enter the group and click on this wall, it says phase created existing. And this one, I edit the group, phase created new, which means that it's the same group, right? You click
Right.
it, apartment B, for both of them, but the elements inside can have different phase, and it can get even weirder that each element could have a different phase. So this specific wall is new. So
I
I
don't remember.
just
Does it hold? 'Cause I knew that was an issue, and that's a great point. Hopefully, everyone follows that, which is the elements inside the group have their phases, and they're gonna have phase created base, just like you would any element. Whatever you paste or create the element in, it's gonna have that phase. But I don't remember. Does, and maybe we could test it real quickly. Does it hold phase demolished as like the previous phase or the current phase, or does it not even hold
Hmm.
demolished when you paste it? I don't remember. Or no, because you have to do that.
Hmm.
It won't hold it if you copy paste. I don't know. Let's see. I'm curious.
Okay, let's try it. So,
Sometimes, because sometimes with those elements, it might actually, because like if you bind, I'm just thinking like when you bind links and stuff, it tries to map that demo correctly, but I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know if it will.
Well, I've just switched this wall over there to demolished,
Yeah.
and we'll see what happens. It doesn't affect this
Right.
other
Right.
wall instance. But let's say that I take this group and paste it into the floor plan view. Paste over here. Okay, it's on top of another one, I
Sometimes the
guess.
other wall, of course, right?
It seems that
No. See,
yeah,
it
it seems
didn't.
copy and pasting doesn't affect the.
Hmm.
It resets the. It
So it just
ignores the phase
resets. Yeah.
demolish.
So and that's good to know, right? Because you could be sitting there thinking, this is great. I could show if I have the same demo in
Mhm.
every single room and in the same phase, um, but I guess it doesn't.
Yeah, so personally, I like simple, which means that I will tell users try to put everything new inside the group. If you're doing demolition or existing, don't put it in the group.
Right.
It could confuse people.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't use like if there's different phasing. Yeah, I would try to just make it simple, one group per phase, or something that users can easily understand, and not
Hmm.
try to do some fancy multiple phase on the same group.
Hmm.
It seems like a confusing. Of course, there are exceptions. I don't know
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
everyone's workflow, but that would be my advice. Okay, so that's for phasing. I've just shown that. Don't make group too large. So yeah, remember that only a single user can modify a group,
Mm.
right? Else
Hmm.
you will get the permission hell,
Yep.
as I call it. So the more elements your group includes, the more complicated it is to collaborate. Avoid permission hell. For example, create a group for an apartment, that entire floor. That's something I saw, like on the tower.
Hmm.
One group for the entire, like 4 apartments, let's say. So I think that's too much.
Right.
Keep it more simple. And yeah, let's talk about something really interesting. And something I actually saw the arguments against groups over links when it comes like to modular and so on.
Hmm.
And it's groups are porous. What does that mean? It mean that it will try to join to the element next to them, which is probably okay in regular construction. But as I mentioned, I'm doing modular.
Hmm.
If I'm doing modular construction, I don't really like these joints at all because it's a totally separate element that is going to be constructed separately. So let's go over there. Okay, well, you can see right here. So let's say that I create a new wall and I paste this group over there. Okay, whatever. And if I move it there, you can see that it joins.
Hmm.
That's what it means by porosity. It just absorbs everything.
Hmm.
It interacts with your environment around it. And so, I mean, there are solutions to it. You could decide to dissolve the join and move it like this. And now you fix the issue. But if you're doing modular, it's something you have to think about. You have to do it for every single wall. I've
Right.
done it on a modular job. It was like every single wall. I had to make sure that I wouldn't see this line because it didn't make sense.
Hmm.
All right. Okay, I think we went through the whole thing. And,
Awesome.
and yeah, another one I would add, like don't use groups if there's a single instance of the group. I don't know why sometimes I enter a project. Why is this a group? Like I do select all instances in the project. There's a single one. Like why is this a group? I don't understand. So and something else, groups can be cool to early on in the project to copy and paste similar things,
Hmm.
but then you can ungroup.
Right.
But if you want to quickly recreate a layout, you can create temporary groups. They're good for that as well.
Definitely. Definitely. Something that Chris mentioned, who had the question about the ceilings, is I think echoing what you were saying about the work sets or working, is that you can only have one person working in the group at the same time, and so having ceilings
Hmm.
separate is helpful if you've got someone
Yeah,
working on RCPs and someone working on the floor plan. So that's a valid point.
sure. Yeah, yeah, makes sense. So this one was about groups versus assemblies versus nested families versus links. I think generally speaking, I won't go too deep about that. Assemblies are more full structure, generally speaking.
Hmm.
Nested families are pretty cool. So And I see, it's just I mention it because I see a lot when working with people. A lot of people are using groups when they should be using nested families. So I'm guessing most people are probably a little bit familiar with the idea of nesting families. But okay, I have a good example here. So let's say that I ungroup this one. So to me, this is not great. If I want to use this, I'm using this table and share multiple times. It might be a good idea to create a nested shared family. So let's say I have this table, and let me go back here, and I want to add a chair inside of it as well. So when I have the shared family, I just make sure that the shared box is checked, and I load this into the table family.
Sean Page just said familyception.
Yeah.
Nice.
Groupception and
like
familyception.
Yeah.
and so of course I could be much more precise and use reference planes. But what's cool about shared families, you can use visibility parameters as well, and you can add a family type parameter where you could swap chairs if you have a couple of them loaded in the same family. For now, let's load this back into the project. And now, of course, I will have too many shares. So let's delete these. But this is shared families. And what's nice about shared families is you can tab select the individual part of the family. So I can tab select this chair, and it can have a unique mark. So it's really kind of a separate family, but that is part of it. So again, I'm sure most people might be familiar with this, but I mention it because too often I see groups when I said this should be a shared nested shared families, and for performance, this is much better to have nested shared family, much faster models,
Right.
especially if you have lots of occurrences, because groups, they can be a bit slowish if there's too many of them,
and especially multiple nested groups too, because then
exactly,
for sure.
as I mentioned, the groupception, like familyception is better than groupception.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, shared. I did put a reference from Belinda Carr that really compares model groups to nested families, and she gives an example of an operating room where, like, let's say that there's 200 operating rooms in a project, and it's always the same layout. A shared family is good for that.
Yeah.
But shared families, the limitation, it's only loadable families, so you cannot include walls, you cannot include floors, you cannot include ceilings. But other than that, they're pretty cool. I really like here nested shared families. And they're schedulable as well. So like the share, I had it can be scheduled individually, separately from the table.
Right. Yep.
And you can tag them as well, tag the individual elements, not just the whole family.
Right. And if you're doing groups anyways, none of those elements should be wall hosted for that, even for that operating room. So it shouldn't matter,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, okay. So the limitation with nested families, they don't include system families. So group are still helpful for that. But you could have a group with multiple nested families. Something I saw is for bedroom layouts as well, like for the handicapped bar and all the soap dispenser and so on, which is such a bore to model. You could have a shared families that include all of this stuff, and you place it into your apartment, and then that is part of the group as well.
Right. Yep.
Okay, lengths, as I mentioned, you talked about that with Aaron. I won't go too deep into it, but you can read the handout. I did put a few of the pros and cons. Mostly, well, it's just annoying to work with. It depends how many models you have, but I was working this modular project where there was like 50 models and one for each department. It was not very fun to work on each of these. It's the main thing.
Editing can be a pain too, and I could tell you, if inheriting projects like that when you didn't set them up too is always fun, right? Figuring out type A, type B, and all the links, and I've been there.
And with links, there are no instance parameters for the elements. We're going to talk about this as well. And reloading the content. If you change the wall types and families, you have to use some sort of dynamo thing to push all the content around it. So not that fun. And to tag in dimension can be problematic. Anyway, so yeah, my conclusion to groups are the overall winner, but it depends. I don't like to talking absolute. Like I've saw some pretty good solid workflows using links as well. It's just it depends. Okay, let's talk about scheduling. I see the time's flying, but
That's okay. Everyone wants to hear about this. So just keep going, man. Don't worry about it.
yeah, good. So scheduling groups. If I try to schedule the groups, well, you can see that in Revit 2023 there are a few more things you can schedule, but still you cannot really schedule the elements inside of the groups, right? It's just the group itself. So what are you going to say about the group? Not that much, right? You can know how many units you have, but that's probably already covered by the rooms. So this is an example of a schedule that you can make with groups. So not a lot of information. I have 4 apartment B on level 1. Okay. So, but if you want to know everything that is included inside of a group, for example. So I have the whole process to automate with Dynamo. I don't think I'm going to go to recreate the whole script. But the first thing I would do, and it is pretty crucial, when you create new parameters, I usually create 2. One that is called group type and group instance, and assign this parameter to all the categories that could be included inside the group. So walls, ceilings, plumbing fixtures, furniture, and so on.
Got it.
And
so you're just making an instance type parameter, and then you're adding that to groups. So you have somewhere to type in beyond just the group type. The elements within the groups have the ability to assign a parameter to themselves, or this parameter to it.
Yeah, exactly. And super important, make sure to check this box. Values can vary by group instance. So which means that on different groups, there can be different value for the same element. If you check the same box, the parameter will be grayed out, which means you have to enter the group to modify it.
Got it.
I think I could, if I have an example. Well, I've already pre-assigned these parameters. And you can see that I can enter a value for this one. And if I select this one, it's not entered. That's right. Awesome.
Yeah, and you're not going into the group to do it. You're tabbing and selecting.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm tabbing and selecting, but with Dynamo, it's going to be done automatically. Okay, so what's the next step? Okay, yeah, create the parameters, assign them to all the categories. And then I like to use a numbering system that's going to work easier with Dynamo, because maybe you have some groups that you want to automate, but not all of them. So I try to have naming systems. So apartment A, apartment B, or module A, module B. So some sort of prefix. And the Dynamo script, I'm not going to talk about all the steps. I'll just say that the list group by key, when I found out about this node, I was pretty riled up about it. This is like one of my favorite node.
Oh, yeah.
You can basically, this tells you how many, is this one? Yeah, how many unique groups I have in the project. So I know maybe I have 20 groups, but the unique groups are apartment A, apartment B, and apartment C. And then I can group them together in Dynamo. Then I can find the unique group name. Anyway, you can download the script at the link I gave earlier on, revitpure.com/build2022. Anyway, gonna skip that for now. And I do have, follow the steps if you want to recreate this. But after you run the script, this is what happens. You have apartment, it says the group type is apartment B, then the group instance is apartment B3, which means that there's at least 3 apartment B. Okay, let's write out. So how many groups is this a group? And you can actually see the groups in the project browser. If I go to model groups over here, and let me ungroup this, ungroup, and I can delete it. Can I delete it? No, it doesn't want to. Maybe there's ones, yeah, exactly. Can I delete it now? Yep. Now I can. Good.
That's a good tip there. You guys can't delete a group if it's placed in the model.
Okay, now I have one group left. Now it's all messed up because of the phases. Let me just clean it up quickly. Okay, so let's say this is apartment B, and you know what? I'll group this whole thing. And this is apartment A. Okay, let me create a few instances. Okay, and then I'm going to the Dynamo player. And so the script is compatible with the new Dynamo player from
Hmm.
Revit 2023. It's called Impure Create. No, it's not this one. Set Group Elements Parameter. So I'm going to click here. And now it says you have to map the group instance parameter name. So it's pre-named with the right parameters, but
Hmm.
you could use custom ones if you want. And it look for group prefix. So my prefix is app. You could use something else if you want. I'm going to click on run, hoping it doesn't crash. Seems fine so far. So clicking here, you can see that this wall says the group type is apartment A, the group instance apartment A3. If I look at this one, it says group type A, apartment A dash 4.
Hmm.
So it gives both, you can know, okay, which group is this, but which instance it is as well.
Hmm. Awesome, I love that.
And
So
yep,
it's taking just I'm just running through the Dynamo theory logic in my head. Just I think it'll help for some people, if, even if they download the script. It's basically just taking the group name, and it's just pushing that now to all the elements within the group, and then
yep,
you're doing it in sequence based on the type. So that's awesome. And then so from there, how do you schedule it now?
good. Yeah, I don't remember if I have a pre-made schedule for this one. I hope I do. You know what? Maybe not. Yeah, okay, so it's okay. Like we'll do all this stuff. So let's go to create a new schedule, and then I create a multi-category schedule. And since Revit 2022, you can have system families and
Yes,
loadable
thank
families
God, huh?
in
Oh my
multi-category
God.
schedule.
It only took how long for that one?
Yeah, and then of course you can filter. Okay, I need to use the. Okay, I have the group instance and the group type parameters over there. And then I can put category and what else do we want to know? The mark, maybe description. Anyway, let's start with that, and I will filter by group type. And let's say I want to schedule for apartment A, and let's sort by category, and we'll see what it does. So right now I can see I have whatever this amount of door in apartment A. There's four of them in apartment A1, four of them in apartment A2. So of course, with schedules, you can play around with formatting and
Hmm.
sorting. You could have a schedule with only apartment A, or you could decide you want to schedule actually the group instance.
Hmm.
And if you're doing a door schedule, you can even say which group it is part of, or which apartment. So basically, with this, you can have everything included inside of an apartment. And this was especially helpful with modules. So with modules, we can know every single thing that is part of the module itself.
Hmm.
I think I do have in PowerPoint. I'm guessing I have better examples of this.
No, I love that. So I mean,
Yeah,
again, I think conceptually, I think is the important part, right? So
yeah, yeah.
in theory, you can schedule elements within a group by default, right? Because they
Hmm.
appear in your schedules, but you have no idea how they relate to the groups, right? And
Hmm.
and, and
Yeah,
so
exactly.
so what you're doing here is you're pushing a parameter, you're pushing a value into a parameter of all the elements within a group that tell it that it's in the group, and then you can
Exactly.
filter that by within the schedule, which is awesome. So now you know where this element exists, which is phenomenal. Very cool.
Yeah, exactly. By default, there's no way to too tell
Right.
which group an
Elements
element is part
elements
of.
don't know what group they're in. Well, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean, I have to imagine they do, but I don't know. But we can't use it. I don't know.
Well, it's somewhere in the API, I
Yeah,
guess.
I'm saying it's got to be there. It has to be there,
Yeah.
right? I would imagine so. Awesome. That's great. And so all of this stuff is available through. I'll post all the links below in the description here after we're done. I'll probably have you send me some so I don't miss any, Nick, or
Sure.
check it afterwards. But definitely, and you're kind enough to share the pamphlets as well as some of the sample files. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking at a few other examples, and I have so like this one, it's for example, every door that is part of apartment A is counted. You have the count
Mm.
parameters, so I know
Hmm.
I have this amount of doors. For this one, it's a bit different. It's sorted by the unique apartments.
Hmm. Hmm.
And for this one, if you have door schedule, you could say, oh, this is part of this group instance or
Yeah,
this group instance.
which is nice. That's super nice to be able to have them by number and level like a door schedule, but then actually use the that
Hmm.
parameter now to tell you what group or what apartment type it's in or something. That's super cool.
And this is another script. I will show all the steps to do this. No, just kidding. I will just show the result.
Let's start another live stream. Hold on, again.
Yeah, I will. This one is to create views for each group.
Oh,
and yeah, creating views is boring. And so, I mean, there are lots of plugins now that can do this stuff, but you can do it with Dynamo as well. Let me show you an example. And you know what? When I presented this at Build, I had an older version of the script and it didn't work, and I kind of looked like an idiot out there. But so I hope
redemption. Let's see a little redemption.
I'm hoping it works. Okay, so it's create views for each group. So what this does, if you have to select the view type and the view template. So I'm using group ceiling plans. That's good. The ceiling view template, that's not good. Let me use ceiling plan new. Floor plan view. Okay, that's good. That's good. Prefix looks for apartment. Let's run it. It says there are warnings, so not a good sign.
Looks like it did something though.
Yeah, it did something. If I go to, so I have 2 apartments in the project. It seems that it has created. Yeah, I think there's maybe an issue with phase on this one. But what this does, it crops the view around it. So it creates the view and it crops it around it.
How is it determined? Is it determining the first instance when there's multiples?
It's the first instance,
Got it.
yes.
Got it, cool.
So will be, if you look at the groups, if I go back to the 3D view, it will be the instance that is, yeah, by the way, when you select the group, there are unique instance numbers as well. So I do include the group instance parameter. You can add it to the model group category as well. So this is 7, this is 8. So the original should be this one, right? No, this is 2, this is 3.
One of those. There it is.
This one. So yeah, the crop view will take this one, the first. Basically, Dynamo takes the first element ID, I guess. Usually it's in order of creation, the first one that has been created.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, and it create views. It seems that I remember there was an issue with phasing. Anyway, it seems weird. Maybe it needs a couple of touch-ups, but like the ideas, generally speaking, seem to be working.
No, that's cool. That's a great idea. I love it. Awesome. No, this is great. I think I think everyone got some value into some great comments in the chat. So awesome, man. Appreciate it. Any final words before we wrap up?
Final word. Yeah, I'm trying something new. My whole Revit Pure Live season that I've just finished was about families, and I'm trying a cohort-based course. What that means it means that it's capped at 25 students. It's something I haven't tried before, but I've been recently on a binge with families, like groups. To be honest, it was more at the beginning of the year. Since then, I've worked on like lots of crazy families, and I've been working really hard to create a course that I will teach to 25 students. And the enrollment to the course close on Tuesday. There's still a few spots left.
Awesome.
If you're interested. Yeah, maybe it's this page over here. It's on with a site called Maven that specializes on cohort-based courses.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll put a link to it. So
okay, good.
So everyone can get to it. So I'll put a link in the description below if you guys are interested in claiming those last couple spots for the exclusive Advanced Family Strategies course.
Very, very much exclusive.
Awesome, man. Well, Nick, I appreciate you coming on. It's always fun. I think everyone else did too. Maybe some people are confused with what show we're on, just because we're constantly flipping back and forth. But I really do appreciate it. I think there's some awesome little gems in here, and yeah, I think everyone got some content out of it. So for anyone who needs to reach out to Nick, definitely head on over to revitpure.com or on Twitter at revitpure. I'll make sure all the links are below. And yeah, appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks. I'm looking at the chat and I recognize almost everyone. So
it's a small little world, this BIM world, right? And I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining again. You got it. And you guys, thanks for joining again to episode 87. Please subscribe to the channel here below as we work our way towards 100,000 subscribers. We got to do it. Next year, we're going to do it. I'm feeling it. We will be off next week for those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving, Thursday night. So we will not be live streaming next week, but I do have an awesome guest the following week. So stay tuned for that. I do have an awesome post or video publishing on the channel on Monday. It should be, as long as I finish it. So definitely look out for that. And you guys are amazing. If you're interested in joining the BIM After Dark community, again, head on over to community.bimafterdark.com. Take advantage of that 30% off and come hang out with me and a bunch of awesome Revit people in our own little private gated community. Maybe I'll be the haven for all the Twitter users that abandon the mayhem going over there. And with that, for those of you who do celebrate, have a great Thanksgiving next week. I'll see you guys soon, and have a great weekend.